The Legend of the Goundirs. Sometimes a group of people would go on a walkabout to another camping ground that was far away. If it became necessary to pass through the recognised boundary of another tribe, travellers would ask for and receive permission. Then an official guide would be appointed to escort them through. One day, one such group was standing near one of the boundaries, and their voices could be heard some distance away. The guide had just told them that they had to pass through a certain stretch of land that was without honey. It was a 3-day journey, and small children couldn't go. The old man said, "Now look here, you know that we must go to this other place, and we shall never leave our children." "Well, that's all right, but I'm obliged to warn you of the illness that you will have to contend with," replied the guide, "and the children will need honey as food and medicine." The determined look on their faces as they trudged along would have been reason enough to deter any enemy. They were a formidable looking lot. Threatened illness always had that effect on them. They walked all day and into the night until the babies had cried themselves to sleep. Then camp was quietly made. In the morning, the babies were feverish. Breakfast over, they quickly moved on again, not daring to stop, as they still had 2 whole days and that night to go before reaching their goal. By midday, the babies were ill, and the toddlers were fretful. At nightfall, they made camp. The sight and sounds were pitiful. "There will be no sleep tonight, so we have to plan for tomorrow," said the old man. They divided the group, one half to stay with the children, the other to sleep out of earshot so they could get a good night's sleep. They would need it, as they would have to carry the children the next day. It was beautiful weather. The next morning was no exception. The people stirred with the first light of day and were soon on the move. About noon, the bigger children started to cry. They couldn't stop, so they carried all the sick children. It was about an hour and a half off sundown when they reached a good camping ground about 2 miles from the boundary. The guide glanced around and said, "Make camp here. I know the people from the next tribe. I'll go and ask for their help. We need their best climber. Trees are very big here, and your men are not used to climbing such great heights." He took himself off in search of help while the people warily made camp. 2 minutes after crossing the boundary, the guide met a hunter. He explained about the camp, the sick children, and their need for honey. The hunter listened carefully and said, "You are out of danger now. There is plenty of honey here. You will just have to look." Upon hearing this, the guide smiled to himself and thought, "How foolish of me to ask a hunter about honey. Why, it's like trying to spear a fish in a tree. Everyone knows that the hunters supply the game, while the tree climbers supply the honey. I must never make that mistake again." The hunter looked at him more kindly and said, "Look, our best climber comes this way every morning at sunrise. You go and find the honey now, before it gets dark, and then come back and wait here in the morning. When he comes, tell him what you have told me, and he will climb for you." On the way back, he found what he was looking for. It was the biggest tree he had ever seen, with honey in every branch. When he arrived back in the camp, he told the old man what had happened. In the morning, he took everyone to the tree where they waited, while he set off to intercept and return with the climber. They soon came back. Immediately, they returned to the tree. The stranger started to climb. He soon reached the first branch and proceeded to chop. When it fell, people were so thankful that they cheered and cheered. Then they dragged it to one side and took the honey. Being completely unaware of their recent ordeal and engrossed in his task of felling the limbs, the cheering that flowed up from the ground was ignored by the climber as he had calmly continued to chop. But it was not so with the guide. Completely consumed with jealousy, He stood back from the rest of the gathering, and every cheer was fuel for hatred of the climber. He was furious with the people. Everyone was busily taking the honey and feeding it to the children as quickly as they could. No one glanced at him, and he said to himself, "How dare they make such a fuss of him? It was I who brought them through the past 3 days. They could not have made it without me. I know where the water holes and best camping are. It's a lucky thing for them I am Goundir, or I would not have been able to do it. I found the honey. I brought the very best climber of the whole tribe here for them. But did I get any praise? Oh no, but I'll show them how clever I really am. I'll turn him into something." When the climber threw down his stone tomahawk, while the air was still ringing with their cheering, the guide, in a rage, summoned all his powers, pointed straight to the climber and said, "Choo! Be a bird." Everything was done so quickly that the people were stunned. Horror gripped them as they stood, silent witnesses. The climber's legs and body started to shrink, and his outstretched arms slowly shrunk, and withered feathers started to appear. He changed from a man to a bird. Afraid to move, the people watched while he clung uncertainly to the bark. Then, for the first time, he flew. He landed halfway up another tree and started to climb. "That's all right," said the guide. "I won't take his ability to climb, and that is why the tree creeper is the best climber of the bird family."